the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. They call it Tornado Alley for a reason. More than a dozen twisters touching down last night in parts of the Plains State.
Look at this. Look at this.
My house is gone.
Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, and Oklahoma all got hammered with funnel clouds and baseball-sized hail. Reporter Rob Hagan is in hard-hit Enid, Oklahoma.
There are power lines down everywhere. And of course, the neighborhood is completely blacked out. Now, we are right at the mouth of where the damage is. We've seen multiple emergency vehicles. They're combing through the debris.
Correspondent Jason Allen continues our coverage.
First responders went on a search and rescue mission overnight, combing through homes reduced to rubble.
There's a car that it just tossed.
The same tornado sent chunks of roofs and cars flying into the air. At least 10 people were injured, and at least one person was taken to a hospital.
The Red Cross on the scene today, assisting those affected by this tornado outbreak. Meantime, in Georgia, wildfires have destroyed nearly 100 homes along the coast. CBS's Mark Strassman has more from Waynesville.
Rural South Georgia's battling a pair of wildfires roughly 65 miles apart. Miraculously, no lives lost. But flames have taken 87 homes, and some homeowners are ignoring calls to evacuate.
The fires are so intense in Georgia that smoke is hovering over downtown Atlanta, some 260 miles away. The other big story we're following this Friday, the push for peace in the Middle East. What next for Operation Epic Fury? Correspondent Molly Hunter.
Both the U.S. and Iran pointing the finger, taunting, threatening the other side. Both sides also say they are ready, they are capable of restarting full-on war if necessary. But at this hour, the tenuous ceasefire holds, and neither side is budging an inch.
War Secretary Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon this morning gave an update on the military conflict. He says our naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is decimating the enemy.
No one sails from the Strait of Hormuz to anywhere in the world without the permission of the United States Navy. To the regime in Tehran, the blockade is tightening by the hour. We are in control, nothing in, nothing out. Iran's battered military, the IRGC specifically, has been reduced to a gang of pirates. They cloak their aggression in slogans, but the world now sees them for what they are. Criminals on the high seas.
Military strategist Dr. Rebecca Grant says controlling that strait is essential to bringing the Iranians to heel.
The U.S. Navy can continue this blockade as long as necessary, and it really does lock down the pressure on Iran. They have no options at this point.
President Trump at the White House Thursday said the war will last as long as it lasts. He's not putting an end date on the conflict.
I don't want to rush it. I want to take my time. We have plenty of time, and I want to get a great deal. I want to get a deal where our nation and the world is safe from lunatics with nuclear weapons.
The commander-in-chief reminding reporters about the length of past U.S. military engagements.
So we were in Vietnam like for 18 years. We were in Iraq for many, many years. I don't like to say World War II because that was a biggie, but we were 4.5, almost 5 years. I've been doing this for 6 weeks.
Meanwhile, Israel and Hezbollah, Iran's top terror proxy, have agreed to a 3-week ceasefire in their war in Lebanon. A U.S. Special Forces soldier is facing charges today after allegedly winning $400,000 on a bet about the capture of former Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro. The Army Master Sergeant was involved in the daring raid in Caracas in early January. Investigators say he used classified information to place bets hours before that operation took place. American researchers working in the mountains of Turkey have uncovered what appears to be tunnels and support beams beneath a massive boat formation. Many are wondering, is this the final resting spot of Noah's Ark? Andrew Jones has been working on that site on Mount Ararat for years and claims to have evidence supporting the existence of the biblical boat.
You have to explain, how did an earthen formation get into the shape of a ship, and that is exactly 300 cubits long, which is the length given in the book of Genesis in the Bible. And so we have the exact length, we have the ship shape, and we're in the right location. And now we're also seeing that the soil inside is different from right outside the formation.
Jones hopes to be able to send a robot down into the tunnels and get video evidence soon, as well as soil samples.
Yes, I do believe that this is the real decayed, buried remains of Noah's Ark, the famous ship. And we're doing our best to convince the skeptics and show the world this site.
Archaeologists have suspected since 1959 that Mount Ararat in Turkey is the final resting spot for Noah's Ark. A former police officer is under arrest for allegedly plotting a mass shooting in New Orleans. Christopher Gillum facing a charge of making a terrorist threat after cops say they found a handgun and about 200 rounds of ammunition in his Florida hotel room. Authorities believe this guy was planning to target a festival. It's unclear which one. Organizers of the New Orleans Jazz Fest are coordinating closely with the FBI. New federal guidance is recommending all school buses be equipped with a system to prevent drunk driving.
A press release from the National Transportation Safety Board says the agency investigated multiple years' worth of incident reports involving school bus crashes and uncovered a larger issue involving those drivers being impaired. As a result, the agency issued new guidance recommending all new school buses be equipped with alcohol detection systems that can disable the bus if they detect the driver might be impaired. The group did not give an estimate of what the move would cost or say who would foot the bill. I'm Monica Nilsson.
What a year it's been for a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and college football champion from the University of Indiana. The accolades for him continued last night in Pittsburgh.
With the first pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Fernando Mendoza.
As NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell making the announcement, Mendoza tapped into his faith after being tapped first by the Raiders.
The last 5 months has been such a blessing by God, and I can't thank him enough. I'm just looking forward to get to work, prove at the next level. College was fantastic. I'm so blessed to have that career, but now I step into a great game of the NFL. Look forward to proving and earning it every single day.
We'll see how he does at the next level. The draft continues through Saturday in the Steel City. Speaking of sports, the Buffalo Sabres have reclaimed home ice advantage in the Stanley Cup playoffs. They beat the Boston Bruins 3-1 in Game 3 last night in Beantown. The Sabres scored 2 goals in the final 16 minutes to secure the win. Head coach Lindy Ruff.
I said before this started, you got 2 good teams that are playing hockey against each other. That's the battle of the playoffs, is you've got to be ready to put away a big win. Like, we have to be ready to put this game away and get ready for a really desperate team on Sunday.
Game 4 is Sunday in Boston. Buffalo now leads the best-of-7 series 2-1. Let's check the stories making news where you live all across New York and Pennsylvania. Tomorrow is National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. Unused, unwanted, or expired medications can be dropped off from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. at a police station or other collection site. Syringes, liquids, or needles will not be collected. To find the nearest drop-off spot near you, head to dea.gov/takebackday. That's dea.gov/Take-Back Day. Pennsylvania State Treasurer Stacey Garrity is refusing to pay for more than $1 million in security upgrades to Governor Shapiro's private home. It's located near Philadelphia. This after his official residence in Harrisburg was attacked last year.
The law just does not provide a mechanism for the state to pay for construction of the governor's private property using taxpayer dollars.
The state did foot the bill for $13 million in security upgrades to the governor's Harrisburg mansion. He and his family survived an arson attack there last spring. Garrity is running against Governor Shapiro in the November gubernatorial election. Several upstate New York communities are getting money from the state to spruce up their downtowns. The cities of Ithaca, Batavia, Casanova, and Rome, each receiving $10 million from the New York Downtown Revitalization Fund. That cash will be used to improve traffic flow, repair sidewalks, enhance signs, create housing opportunities, as well as welcome new businesses. The Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission has said it will never text you about unpaid tolls. And now it's launched a new initiative that will text you about unpaid tolls. Mackenzie Jarrell with ABC 27.
This change comes with a pilot program, and it's leaving many people concerned with what's a scam and what's not.
Over the next 6 months, the Turnpike will send texts to drivers with outstanding toll balances. These motorists think that's not such a good idea.
I feel like they should still send them out in letter form and not text messages, because the scams, everybody thinks that if you don't know a number that texts you these days, it's a scam.
I've actually gotten a text message from the Turnpike, and I was like, that is a scam. I should not respond. So to hear that they're doing it is just crazy to me.
The texting program starts June the 1st. New York higher education leaders continue to push the SUNY Reconnect program. It provides free tuition for adults between the ages of 25 and 55 who pursue degrees in high-demand fields. Only adults who do not already have a college degree are eligible for the savings. SUNY Chancellor John King says more than 5,600 people across the state have benefited from the SUNY Reconnect program since its inception last fall. The New York State budget is now 24 days late. For those of you keeping score at home, lawmakers have approved 6 short-term budget extenders. Government watchdog Ken Girardin at the Manhattan Institute says, unfortunately, there's nothing that taxpayers can do to force lawmakers into adopting an on-time budget.
The budget is late, but state agencies have stayed open, and state lawmakers and the governor are going to keep haggling over the unrelated policy changes that are being enacted with the budget.
Girardin questions the need for a $263 billion price tag on this year's state spending plan.
If you had just controlled for inflation since 2019, allowed programs to increase basically on track with the cost of living, New York's budget would be $20 billion smaller. And that's without looking at how extra money has come in from the federal government.
He tells CNY Central the New York State budget has grown at more than twice the rate of inflation the past 7 years. Most of the tax revenue collected in the Empire State goes to either school aid or Medicaid. New York has the highest Medicaid costs of any state in the country, and this year marks the 7th consecutive year that New York State has not met the April 1st budget deadline. Pennsylvania officials say changes are coming after the testing system used by schools this week for the annual PSSAs malfunctioned. Students all across the Commonwealth were unable to log in, and that forced districts to postpone those exams. The Pennsylvania Education Department says it will not renew the contract with the company that provided those online tests. Area apple growers are worried a warm spell last week, followed by a cold snap early this week, could spell doom for their harvest next fall. Apple farmer George Joseph runs North Star Orchards in Oneida County, New York. He tells Spectrum News,
it was about 22 degrees here, but I think more importantly it was the duration. How long was it cold? And it was cold from about 10 o'clock at night till about 8 o'clock in the morning. So that's where you have some lasting effect.
Some area apple farmers resorted to setting fires around their orchards on Sunday and Monday to help keep the trees from getting too cold. Joseph says that cold spell wouldn't have been a problem had it not gotten so warm last week. 2 people, including a 15-year-old boy, suffered serious burn injuries yesterday in the Ontario County, New York town of Seneca. Police say the boy got hurt after pouring gasoline onto a fire outside a home. The resulting explosion set him on fire. That teenager is currently in critical condition at Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester. A 51-year-old woman was also injured while trying to extinguish the flames. Something stinks in the city of Buffalo and the surrounding suburbs. A lot of residents have been noticing a peculiar odor of late. Williamsville resident Stephanie Brown tells WIVB,
I smelled it a couple more times and it was really strong. And I looked, kind of around to see if maybe somebody was spraying a lawn. Nobody was spraying. So I'm like, I don't really want to be smelling whatever this is.
What is it? A lot of folks are wondering. The state DEC investigating numerous reports of a chlorine-like odor across the northern suburbs of Buffalo the past several days. And who would have thunk it? Gardening is good for your health. Correspondent Tammy Trujillo.
Neurosurgeon Deborah Benzel says gardening is good exercise involving the full body, helps with bone health, will likely mean you're getting more vitamin D from the sun, and it lowers the risk of dementia.
Remember, it's exercise, so prepare for it, don't overdo it, and after you've done it, take a good stretch. And then look forward to the smell of the herbs, the taste of the vegetables, the beauty of the flowers.
She recommends taking a break the next day if you have some aches and pains. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
All right, well aware of those aches and pains. Thank you, Tammy. Let's check sports next. As mentioned earlier, the Buffalo Sabres now hold a 2-1 lead over the Boston Bruins in the opening round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Game 4 Sunday in Boston. Carolina and Colorado also skating to victories last night. Both of those teams hold a commanding 3-0 series lead. In the NBA playoffs, the New York Knicks are down 2-1 to the Atlanta Hawks, losing last night by just a point. Jalen Brunson turned the ball over with a chance to win it at the end. Ouch. Minnesota and Toronto also scoring victories in postseason play. In baseball, the Yankees sweep the Red Sox at Fenway. The Phillies fall to the Cubs in extra innings. The Mets took the rubber match in their series with the Twins. That game at Citi Field, and the Pirates fell to Texas 6-1. Still to come on the Noon Report for a Friday. Why there are worse things than a late New York State budget. Pro-lifers react to a pro-abortion ruling in Pennsylvania. And Kev says it's a mixed bag weather-wise this weekend. His forecast is yours right after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. According to the Daily Mail, some scientists may have found evidence of the first non-binary person. And I quote, Stone Age societies embraced complex identities and flexible gender roles, experts have revealed, after unearthing the skeleton of a woman who was buried like a man 7,000 years ago. Studies of 125 skeletons across several cemeteries in Hungary have found that while the majority of people were buried according to their gender, some defied the norm. End quote. Since people who lived 1,000 years before Abraham didn't post their pronouns on social media, we'll just have to trust this research article published in the American Journal of Biological Anthropology under this title, Fixed and Fluid, the Two Faces of Gender Roles, a combined study of activity patterns and burial practices in the European Neolithic. The gist of the article is that back then, men tended to be buried in one way and women in another. However, a few unearthed skeletons don't quite fit the burial pattern. Also, the bones of some of the women showed evidence of consistent kneeling in life, a practice that is more associated with men from that time. And so, in the absence of any real biological, genetic, or developmental science to support transgender ideology, these researchers are finding a way to inject it into paleontology. After all, who needs evidence when you can rely on a newspaper to make a just-so claim that these findings, and I quote, could shed a whole new light on gender fluidity in the Neolithic? It's all common practice in the evolving field of evolutionary psychology. Of course, the most obvious irony here is that the claims of the research are based on examining skeletons that are known to be male and female, which shows that the researchers know perfectly well the difference between them. Within all cultures are norms of masculinity and femininity. Individuals vary in how they express who they are as male and female. These differences do not change in the least the fact that human beings are sexually distinct. The fact that researchers can tell the difference between a boy bone and a girl bone undermines the whole idea of gender fluidity. And of course, it's just bad scholarship to suggest conclusions from a sample of very few graves in very few locations. We know very little about ancient Egypt, much less ancient Europe. So suggesting that Neolithic cultures had gender fluidity based on a few graves is kind of like suggesting polling results for a sizable city based on vague conversations with 2 or 3 people. It's an example of historical presentism. It's a way of looking at the past through the lens of the present. Not to mention, even if conclusive evidence were found of ancient transgenderism, what difference would that make? The discovery of a so-called gender fluid society in ancient Europe says nothing about how people then or now ought to live. No one would claim that the egregious behavior of groups from another time and place justifies the same behavior in this time and place. In fact, evolutionary psychology often succumbs to what might be called just so stories. Borrowing a title from Rudyard Kipling, this is the tendency to announce conclusions that simply must be so because they're required by assumptions that cannot be questioned. For example, there's a long history of explaining past behavior through the lens of neo-Darwinian assumptions, like natural selection. Increasingly today, however, it's the assumptions of so-called gender ideology and sexual orientation that are behind the just so stories that masquerade as science. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored with Dr. Timothy Paget. And for more resources like this or to share this commentary with others, go to colsoncenter.org/radio.
Thanks, John. Weather where you live with meteorologist Kevin Williams next.
Good afternoon. For this afternoon, we'll call it seasonable with skies that are cloudy to occasionally partly sunny. High temperatures ranging from only around 50 near Lake Ontario to the low 70s in parts of western Pennsylvania south of Interstate 80. Clouds will gather tonight. Later tonight, tomorrow, we'll have some rain and showers. Maybe a rumble of thunder in parts of western Pennsylvania. The low temperatures tonight, 40s. High temperatures tomorrow, only reaching the lower 50s. On Sunday, skies break after a cloudy start for some sun. High temps 50s to near 60.
All right, thank you, Kevin. It's Friday, folks. Congratulations, you've made it. And this is the Noon Report on Family Life. This is Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Jason McGuire with New York Families and Michael Geer with the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Well, gentlemen, we've been off a couple weeks, but it's so great to have you with us today. So much to get to. We'll try to do it in 10 minutes. We'll jump right in with you, Jason. New York lawmakers passing another budget extender this week. State spending plan nearly a month late now. But you argue there are worse things than an on-time budget in Albany. What do you mean by that?
Well, there are. For example, when we do extenders, we're simply keeping spending at last year's level. Now, at some point, they're going to approve that, and spending is going to grow astronomically again. So as long as we have extenders, the spending is kept flat. The other thing is the budget tends to keep the legislature focused on those issues and not the other things that tend to not be good in our state. And so I appreciate the fact when legislators' minds and activities and time are tied up in budget activities and not necessarily on very liberal social ones that will hurt us here in the state of New York.
The big ugly, as you like to call it. Michael, the Commonwealth Court, huge ruling this week. I know it dismayed you and so many in Pennsylvania. This 4-3 decision by the Commonwealth Court that essentially lifts the ban on taxpayer-funded abortions. What are the ramifications of this ruling, and what are the chances it'll be overturned on appeal?
It's a terrible ruling, one that we kind of anticipated might be coming from either the Commonwealth Court or the Supreme Court. Ramifications are very significant. Number one, forcing Pennsylvania taxpayers, including the millions of us who believe that abortion is the taking of an innocent human life, forcing us to pay for abortions with their tax dollars. But it goes well beyond that into declaring this so-called right to reproductive autonomy and basically creates the potential for any and all regulations, guidance, protections of women and babies that have been enacted in law being struck down and preventing future protection for the unborn. So it's a major challenge that we are looking for ways to fight.
Yeah, where in the state constitution, because I'm having a hard time finding it, where in the state constitution is there a line that guarantees a right to reproductive autonomy?
This is one of those ones like the Roe versus Wade decision, which was kind of pulled out of whole cloth, basically a political decision, a policy decision being made by jurists, by judges that shouldn't be making policy decisions.
Well, Jason, it's an election year, big election year, midterm election year, and we got some issues on that front to discuss. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney has threatened a lawsuit in May over the state's voter rolls. She thinks there's some funny business going on here. Is there a real need to investigate the voter voter registration system in the Empire State?
Well, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney is the founding member of the Election Integrity Caucus, and so she's been working hard and looking at these numbers, making sure that there is confidence in our system. And I do think we should look at those numbers. I don't want to discourage people from voting. I think that every election matters. I think that every vote matters. But I also believe that there are at least attempts at fraud in every election. And so it is a constant vigilance that we want to make sure that there is integrity in the election process. And I applaud Congresswoman Claudia Tenney's efforts to make sure that voters can be consistently sure that their vote is safe and secure.
All right. Well, there was a recent audit in Pennsylvania, Michael, on the motor voter system that's been in place for several years now. The Auditor General says it works, but there's room for improvement. What are some of the vulnerabilities associated with combining the voting process with getting a driver's license?
We're seeing sort of problems with the whole voter registration combined with the motor vehicle registration in a number of different ways. When we even look at the CDL licenses that are being granted, and we're finding those that are not citizens are granted CDL licenses that they can't read or speak English effectively. So there's problems there, and it's not a surprise that it's tying over into the motor voter situation where people come to get their driver's license, check a box, and next thing you know, PennDOT has granted them a voter registration. So as the Auditor General looked at it, saw there are problems. As Jason said, it's good to encourage voting, but we need to do it in a systematic way to prevent those who are not citizens from registering to vote. And we think the motor voter program creates problems in that regard.
Gotcha. Well, the second annual Family Structure Index went public this month. We talked about this at length last year when they did this for the first time. And this year, Jason, it ranks New York 44th in the nation when it comes to family stability. What are some of the metrics measured in this survey, and did New York fare better or worse than last year?
Yeah, so the Family Structure Index is a three-part statistical measurement that evaluates trends in fertility and family formation and family stability in each of the 50 states. This is something that has really been spearheaded by our allies and partners in Ohio at the Center for Christian Virtue and the Institute for Family Studies. Last year, New York came in with a number of 48, and so we came in near the bottom. We've moved up to number 44 this year, but not everything is in position. If the whole country is moving in the wrong direction, the alignment of where those numbers come in may not indicate everything.
Yeah.
For example, the greater number, if you will, is going down regarding married adults in New York, and yet children that are being raised by married parents has slightly increased. So there are some positives in these measurements, but also a lot of concern moving forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting to look at the numbers here, Michael. I know Pennsylvania ranked 34th in the nation this year, about 10 spots better than New York when it comes to family stability. But what were some of the key findings you noticed in the Family Structure Index, and was that ranking better than last year?
And we're pretty much at the same place that we were last year in terms of the ranking. The number that sticks out the most to me in terms of something that people are noticing in our society is the fertility rate, the replacement rate, if you will, for the next generations at 1.55 here in Pennsylvania, and replacement is 2.1 or a little bit better than that in terms of fertility. And what we're seeing then is the ramifications of that with colleges closing in Pennsylvania, with enrollment in public schools going down significantly, creating a situation where there's more cost per student because you have these buildings that are meant to host many more children that are in there, and we see it going off the cliff in the future. Yeah. And when you have the low fertility rates, you have situations like we see in Japan where they're creating and developing robots to take care of the elderly because there's not enough population coming in behind to take care of the aged and the infirm.
Yeah, unreal. And you even see countries like China now getting rid of their one-child policy. We have a recreation epidemic in this country right now, and encourage everyone to read that Family Structure Index report that's out there. Jason, real quickly, a new law in New York now bans employers from using credit history when making hiring decisions. Wonder if this applies to not-for-profits or faith-based groups, and do you support this law?
Well, it is going to apply to just about everybody in this state. But I think the greater concern is the fact that New York is moving to making it more and more challenging for employers, period. It was just a year or two ago that we actually said you cannot look at criminal background history in most employment hires here in the state of New York. Now you can't look at credit history. I wonder how long until we can no longer look at employment history before we consider whether or not to hire somebody.
Yeah, that's incredible when you think about it. And then, Michael, we'll end with you. The Pennsylvania House rolling out a series of hate crimes bills. I know that always concerns you when they do that. This would significantly expand the power of the government to empower the so-called thought police. Why is this legislation so dangerous, and why do our listeners need to be paying attention to this?
Well, these hate crimes laws, or so-called hate crimes laws, put enhanced penalties or increased penalties on particular criminal acts based on when the government thinks there was some motivation motivated by hate. And that gets into, as you said, thought police. Kind of how does the government make this determination as to what was in your head? And what we've seen in some other jurisdictions where they have laws like this is that, and especially we're seeing in Europe and in Canada, where people hold a biblical values, the government may decide that those biblical values, or speaking of them or praying about them, somehow constitutes a hateful position against, let's say, someone in the LGBT community. Next thing you know, they end up being prosecuted and punished as a result of that. So we think it's wrong, and we are actively opposing these hate crimes bills.
All right, that'll have to be the last word this week. But if folks have questions about any of the topics discussed on today's programs, or they'd simply like to learn more about New York families doing such a great work in the Empire State, Jason, where can they find you online?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Family Institute doing awesome work in Harrisburg. Michael, where can folks find you?
PAFamily.org.
They get it done every Friday. Capital Connection comes your way Fridays during the Noon Report, or online anytime. Check them out at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and FamilyLife.org. And finally, at noon for a Friday, a new study finds the average person takes 10 to 20 minutes to fall asleep each night, and married couples tend to get better sleep than those who are not. Correspondent Bree Tennis fills us in.
The University of Arizona Sleep Lab says sleeping next to someone you love helps you fall asleep faster, reduces depression, and helps you live longer. Researchers say it doesn't matter who that love is directed toward, human or pet, because it's the security trigger that releases oxytocin in the brain, which lowers stress, reduces anxiety, and creates a sense of safety. So sharing really is caring when it comes to sleep. Just don't hog the covers. I'm Bree Tennis.
All right, thank you, Bree. And just like that, we're out of time. That's our world, the world we live in. Friday, April 24th. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.